Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back. Another episode of the NewOrleans.Football podcast coming to you from the Better Call Bado podcast studio and presented by Hardhide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey. We got a great show for you guys today. We're going to talk about where Sean Payton should go next season. Should it be here in New Orleans? We're going to touch on what Dennis Allen should do at quarterback after the bye. Should he go back to Jameis Winston or stay the course with Andy Dalton? And we're going to talk about some of the things that have gone wrong for the Saints this season to lead to the 4 wins that they're sitting on right now. If you need legal help with any of the following: car wrecks, offshore injuries, 18-wheeler collisions, Maritime Jones Act, hurricane and storm claims, you better call BETTER at 504-323-7777 or 985-303-7777 for your free consultation and case review. And Hardhide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey is a 86 proof blend of 3-year-old wheat bourbon, American light whiskey, and fresh Ponchatoula strawberries blended in New Orleans. It's not for the thin-skinned. Look for it in your favorite stores, bars, and restaurants. And, of course, check out our friends at Firehouse Subs, Veterans Boulevard location. They are doing a lot of great things for the community. We were just out there for an event this weekend. It was a big hit, good crowd. Appreciate everyone for coming out. And make sure you check them out because they do so much for the community. When you buy a sub there, odds are they're doing something to give back to the New Orleans community. All right, let's get into the show.
Gentlemen, what's going on today? Mike Triplett, Nick Underhill, DJ. How we doing?
Doing all right, man. Doing all right. How you doing?
I'm all right. I was just thinking as you was reading the ad read, and I said, it just hit me. One thing I learned this year was that, like Hardhide, being the Saints fan is not for the thin skin, or being someone that covers the team or someone that watched the team. It just ain't it, man. It just ain't it. So this is me plugging back the sponsor. If things are rough for you, just go holler at Hardhead and get a little quick little fix in. So anyway, shout out to our sponsors. Let's get into some topics. First things first, there was a report today from Jeff Duncan of NOLA and NOLA.com, and he basically reported that it was a potential that it was a chance that Sean Payton returns to the Saints as head coach. And that would, basically it would be like at the top of his list of options, maybe along with some other teams. And so when I read the report, I kind of did a double take at it. Up until reading it, I never thought it was a remote possibility. Well, just maybe a little bit, but not nothing really serious. But it was reported, and I think it's a fun talking point. And so we're going to chat a little bit about it. So we'll start with you, Nick. What are your thoughts on this report, and what are the chances something like this actually materializes?
I'll believe it when I see it. That's kind of where I'm at with it. It's just one of those things. He left. I still don't see why he would come back here. I don't know what the drawing card would kind of be. I don't think the roster is really great right now. I don't think that I just don't see the what has changed from when he left to make him want to come back here and be the coach here for this team. I just think that there's a little bit of a runway. And I think if you're picking your spot, kind of, if he actually has options, I think there's going to probably be some other spots that are going to be a little bit more appealing. As somebody who left here for another job and thought they were never coming back here, I understand a little bit if there's something
you just
calling
gave us
you
the
back,
blueprint.
calling you back.
Yeah,
to the city a little bit.
Yeah, I guess he is coming back.
Yeah,
but,
I
know, right?
So I'll never say never, even though I was kind of thinking never on this before. I will say this though, I don't think a story like that happens by accident.
Mm-hmm.
It came from somewhere. We kind of, we're aware of relationships people have and that. Like I'm not dismissing this.
Right.
The story showed up, and it showed up for a reason. So, I'll open the door a little bit on it.
The reason doesn't automatically. I mean,
it
doesn't automatically mean because he's coming back and they're flying out a test balloon. There could be a lot of reasons, like the Saints trying to drum up, that leverage that, oh no, you have to give us a first round pick because he might want to come back to us. So we're not going to just give him away. Or it could be Sean Payton trying to drum up interest. Or, I mean, it was report. You're using the term report loosely. It was a speculative column using some informed, like people close to Payton have suggested that he would consider coming back. I mean,
That
it
part
wasn't
of it's
like
a
a
report.
hard,
That part of it's a report, though.
Yeah,
Someone
yeah.
that knows Sean's thinking says that he's
right.
wanting to
But
come
it
back.
wasn't a Sean Payton wants to come back to the Saints.
Yes.
If it was a Sean Payton wants to come back to the Saints, he'd be here already.
Yeah.
Like they would take him back. The Saints would absolutely take him back. But I will say this, the reason why we're not just completely dismissing it is this was not a bitter divorce. And I still don't believe that he orchestrated his exit just to go to the Miami Dolphins, which I know some people believe. Sean Payton was burned out, and he was thinking, I had heard, the first inklings I heard of it last year were November, that Sean's really talking about retiring and stepping away after this season. And a lot of people dismissed it as, let's give him a couple weeks after the season. He'll probably change his mind. But that was a burnout-based decision. And Sean even said in his farewell presser, and he said ever since, he told us, this was probably just going to be a 1 year off situation. But he wasn't leaving the Saints because he thought this job was intolerable. And as a matter of fact, the last time he considered leaving, he explored the 49ers, he explored the Colts, he looked at all the other teams with openings, and he said, I don't want any part of these dysfunctional organizations. And usually the teams firing their coaches are dysfunctional at some level. He loves the setup here. He loves his relationship with Mickey Loomis, obviously with Jeff Ireland, Gail Benson, everybody else. So I do think that it's not a wildly far-fetched idea. He didn't leave because of things he hated here. There's no bitter relationships. But I still think we're talking about a Hail Mary here. We're not talking about something that is very realistic. And he would have to shove a pretty good friend out of the way in order to do it. Which
well, that's
I
the
also
craziest part of the story.
Which I also can't. The other one, he kind of wanted, he's been talking about going to the Chargers, which would be shoving Joe Lombardi out of there too. So there's some interesting conflicts in the middle of all this too.
There's a few things on the story. One, reading it, and I'm not guessing at anybody's sources or anything, but the story was written from a Sean point of view, a Sean Payton
people
camp
close to
point of view, more so than a Saints point of view. So that's possibly him coveting the job or using the job for leverage somewhere else. Like, I think there's a possibility that they want some type of firmer commitment from another team. So, all right, let's pull the Saints back into this, put some pressure on wherever Sean's actually kind of looking to go. He could actually be looking at the Saints though too. The interesting thing with the story is that I think it's good for everybody. I think it's good for Sean Payton because it allows him to create some leverage with other teams. It allows the Saints, when they're negotiating with teams, to say, well, we want to keep him, like you pointed out. The only person that's really bad for is Dennis Allen. And he's the one that now he's kind of a lame duck out here a little bit. People are looking at him like they want him out of the job. And now here comes the guy that put you in your position with the team, kind of making things a little bit worse for you. So that's the one part where I think people would be aware that what they're doing to DA. So that single element of it, of believing that there is some type of relationship that DA and Sean and all these people like actually kind of liked each other. I don't know if this happens just loosely, because it does put pressure on DA. And I guess it could get bad for the Saints too, kind of, because if the fan base is all frothing at the mouth for Sean, and they're looking at him and they're thinking, oh, he's going to come back and be the savior, which was kind of the immediate reaction. Now, if he doesn't come back and Dennis Allen's the coach, things could get ugly really quick. The only way to fix that then is by winning games. And we haven't seen enough evidence for them to kind of stand in against that. So I think the most interesting thing with the Saints moving forward over the next few weeks is just kind of the public sentiment. Like, Gail Benson has never had people screaming at her when she goes out, and when she's out around the town, she's probably going to start hearing people screaming, what are you doing? Get rid of DA, do this, do that. So that kind of pressure too is kind of a wild card in the whole just global coach situation. If they kind of feel a little bit of heat coming at them, how do they react to it?
No, that's really interesting. But you're right. Whatever percentage of the fan base wanted to fire Dennis Allen, I'm sure it just doubled with the people that just want Sean Payton back. So, and if we're taking speculation times 3, I kind of wonder, does a story like that exist if there isn't somebody somewhere who knows what their thinking is on Dennis Allen? Like, did Sean Payton get wind that there's going to be an opening and he's throwing his hat in for that opening? I mean, obviously, Payton would know what the Saints are thinking about Dennis Allen. He doesn't.
Why does he need to negotiate through the media, though?
No, I know. But what I'm saying is, I don't necessarily think Sean Payton playing in this story. We know some of the people who are close to Sean Payton. And they'll fly trial balloons. I mean, there have been Arizona Cardinals and Los Angeles Chargers trial balloons coming out. Like I said, 6 years ago, there was returning to the Cowboys trial balloons. that doesn't necessarily mean Sean's like, hey, I'm tasking you guys to go out and get me a job. He doesn't necessarily need that. But I do wonder if that only presented itself because there is a hint that there's going to be an opening here. I don't think he would try to create an opening that wasn't already going to be there. But again, that's so many layers of speculation. I still think it's a better than 50% chance than Dennis Allen stays. And even if it's only a 40%, 30% chance it leaves, even then it's still only a 5% that Sean Payton's the one who replaces him. So we're talking about this because it's not the most unrealistic thing we've ever heard. But like I said, I still consider it kind of a Hail Mary.
Yeah, people close to Sean Payton said Sean Payton wanted to go to the Colts in 15, and come to find out Sean Payton actually wanted to go to the Colts in 15. So it's never something that you can kind of fully dismiss.
Yeah. No, it's I'm just listening to you guys talk about it because you guys, like, you've spoken to Sean and you have a lot of experience with him. You interviewed him on the podcast.
I'll say this: people close to Sean Payton kind of played dumb on the topic this week when asked about it. So, but of course they're gonna look. The other interesting thing about Sean that I heard this week is that when he was leaving, they offered him like wide receiver free agent money to stay, and he didn't.
He was already making that. I never got the exact number, but I think he was making in his previous deal about $16 million a year. So
yeah, I heard around
that wide receiver money wasn't that far off from what he was already making.
I heard like 18, 19-ish million. Like it's, not a hard report here, but I do believe those numbers were.
And the other thing
high.
They did definitely offer him was they offered him the opportunity to just take a 1-year sabbatical.
Yeah.
Like they said, if you need a year off, take a year off and you can come back the year after that. So if it ended up playing out like that, that's something they actually offered him at one point.
That
is new to me. So basically, they offered him exactly what he wanted.
They tried to do everything they could to keep him, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah. So, I mean, this sounds like it would be pretty unprecedented, right? I mean, I think you got Rooney Rule coming into play. You got like just,
would they have the Rooney Rule because he's already under contract? I don't.
Yeah.
Like, is this like a hiring, or are you like the teachers coming back for the substitute teacher if this were to happen? Like, I don't know. It's kind of it's unprecedented.
You have 2 head coaches on your payroll.
Yeah.
right. So I mean, you could just be I don't know. That's an interesting thought. I mean, just you guys like just answering this straightforward. If he voices to Mickey Loomis that he wants to return, what do? You take him back?
Yeah,
he would. I think so too.
He would. I would. Anyone. It's Sean Payton. Like, no offense to DA, it's Sean Payton.
Yeah.
Like, it's just kind of, come on.
There's a scenario where you're in a bind. I mean, if DA's 1 game over 500 right now, then that puts you in a tough spot. But it doesn't put you in a tough spot with what the team is like now.
I'd still make the move. I mean, look, I think it's the dangerous thing with Sean, and fair or not, like if you hire him, you're kind of looking at the situation like, what are you doing in 2 years? Is he going to want to still be the coach in 2 years? Because Sean's historically shown us that he's going to get cold feet, or he's going to want to try to figure something out over and over and over. Like, he's never comfortable enough where he's at. He'd come back now and say, "Oh, I've had this perspective. This is where I want to be. I want to finish my career." And then 3.5 years down the road, it's going to be, oh, would Sean Payton want to go do this job or do that job? Or people close to Sean Payton say this. And that's kind of the problem. So the only thing that you would have to do here is, if you're Mickey and them, is kind of say, well, do we want to figure this out post Sean now and kind of figure it out and move on and start our cultural rebuild? Or do you just hold on to this for as long as you can? I think you hold on to it for as long as you can, especially given where the team's at. Like, they're at a spot where they got to rebuild. They got to figure out how to reload the team, reestablish the culture in the locker room. Sean's the guy to do all that. So if he wants to come back, it's not about DA. There's only probably a handful of coaches that I think if you put, okay, you can have him or Sean Payton, that I would take the other guy. And those are like the best of the best. And, in a specific situation, under certain circumstances, Sean might be number 1 in some of those places.
Well, that's a really interesting point because, and I wrote this today when I was dissecting the what's going to go into their DA decision. And I think one of the main things that could get Dennis Allen fired after just 1 year is if they decide we want to take a totally different approach. We want to rebuild, refresh, kind of gut the roster a little bit, kind of catch up on the salary cap a little bit, and get a coach who can build a program, kind of reboot this program. And Dennis Allen doesn't feel like a rebooter, but Sean Payton does. Even though it would be Sean Payton, the guy they had for 16 years, he is on a very short list, and that's why he's going to be attractive to other teams as somebody you would want to build it from the ground up with.
All right, going around the room. Kev, would you rather have the first round pick or Peyton? Like the trade, assuming you're trading him, or would you rather have Peyton?
Man,
I
that
like
is a
that.
good
Long
question.
pause.
That is a good question. I think that I would take Sean Payton because what is the success rates on first round picks traditionally, right? It's less than 100%. Sean Payton, I would probably, for the Saints, I think you can probably not 100% because nothing is, but at least in short term, because you did make a point about, which I didn't think about that neither, but Sean has tried to leave a few times. So what makes this the last time, right? So that is a good point. But yeah, I think he's a sure bet. He with a lesser roster potentially last year on offense at least, he had this team playing better, right? And so when you take a step back and look at it, I think that he's going to be he's going to be a better bet than anybody you're going to get in the draft. But with respect to the fact that that pick is a quarterback and that changes your franchise, right? But what's the hit rate on
But it
top 10
wouldn't be. Yeah,
quarterbacks?
it wouldn't be.
It's less
It's
than
not going to be
20%.
Stroud or.
Yeah, it's really low, right? And so I think that when you look at the best thing for the franchise long term, that you know what you're going to get, I think you got to go Sean Payton here because you know that you're going to someone that's going to consistently keep you relevant and people are going to want to come play for him. You can have a pick a quarterback and he can turn out to be, Mr. Trubisky or somebody, right? I mean, he was picked high, so yeah, I'm going Sean Payton.
All right, DJ, you're next after Mike. Mike, what do you got?
Yeah, if my choice is what we're really talking about, like the 18th pick in the draft or Sean Payton, of course I'd have to take Sean Payton. But I overall am.
Wait. Were we talking about the Saints' original pick back or the pick
or
whatever
the
trade?
Whatever the
trade.
Chargers might have.
Well, yeah,
whatever he's going to get. He's not getting. You're not getting a third pick in the draft round.
Gotcha,
I'd probably take a top 3 draft pick over Sean Payton because I'm so ready for something new. I'm tired of watching them try. Like, I haven't enjoyed 19, 20, 21, 22 that much. It feels like they're trying to hang on to something that's not there anymore. I'm kind of excited for this might take a couple years, but we're going to get this thing right again. So if we were talking about like a top 3 pick and a real franchise quarterback, I might take that over Peyton. But if we're talking about something like the 20th pick in the draft, I'd take Peyton.
DJ?
I'm taking Sean Payton, no question. Like it's not even debatable. Top 3 pick, 18th pick. Like it's Sean Payton. I think he's worth more than a first round pick. Like he can change your whole franchise. So we seen him do that. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I would take Peyton. I think probably over any of these guys, even if it's a top 3 pick, you might end up drafting Zach Wilson. So, you just don't know how it's going to end up. And I think at some point you're going to find your quarterback with Sean. Look, they haven't done a great, I'm not going to act like he's the great quarterback solver. He got one guy in the building who was actually good at the position and nobody else really was. They were mediocre to poor. Some of his, excitement over mediocre players is a little bit alarming at that position. Like he used to tell people all the time, like post Drew, who's going to be the starter? Don't know. We got 2 of them in the building. Like, it's like, well, you didn't really have any. And that's fine though. But I think himself, as far as, attracting somebody to play the position, your odds of attracting someone here to actually do the job and do it well are much higher with him than with DA. And coming into this offseason, who's going to want that job? If you're a quarterback and you're looking at it, who would want to come here? If you put Sean there right now, you're going to have people that are going to say, oh, I want to go play for him. And that's, I think one of the major differences. The one thing I would do, I would make him sign a long ass contract, and I would probably do the Holmgren thing where I negotiate it right away. All right, Sean, if you want to leave, you can leave, but that team has to give us a first round pick. And I would get that in writing in the contract. So when the time comes for him to leave, that's already settled. You aren't worrying about it, and it's set in stone, and you're kind of protecting yourself against this guy who's already left you once and has tried to leave you 2 other times before. So that's kind of how I would do it.
I'll put 2 firsts in there.
Yeah, I don't think
you get 1 first right now. Yeah, I mean that you made a point about guys that's wanting to come here, which it made me start thinking about like the free agent quarterbacks and. Mike may get his favorite quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo here. if Sean Payton returns to the Saints, or Geno Smith, or
Tom Brady.
That's right.
That is probably the guy.
Oh man,
that would probably be the guy.
It would absolutely be. Which well, it would have been Brady in, what was it, 20 if Drew
Yeah.
wouldn't have retired. So,
Drew wouldn't
yeah,
have come
or
back. If Drew wouldn't have come back, it would have
Drew
been
wouldn't have
crazy.
come
Yeah.
back. Yeah,
Yeah.
excuse me. And or it would have been the potential 2022 version of the Dolphins, right? Because that's what was supposed to be in Miami. But yeah, Sean Payton and Tom Brady. So yeah, that'd be interesting. So it's something to watch. It's something to watch. It's so fun. It's something fun to talk about as a podcast host. That those topics just write themselves. So Sean, keep putting out information, and we'll keep talking about it. So all right, let's move on a little bit. Back to the current head coach. DA said that he's going to go with Andy Dalton as the starting quarterback this week against the Falcons. Mike, is that the right decision? Should he give Jameis a chance? Like, what do you like? Is this psychotic, or like, hey, look at Dalton, he's playing well. Like, just it's not all on him. Like, so how do you perceive this?
Well, I want to talk about him separately, and that also in the article I wrote, that's how I approached it, because I think it's two separate conversations. You can't talk about Andy Dalton without people viewing him through a Jameis Winston prism. Andy Dalton on his own, I see a lot of Twitter comments from like national people who don't follow the team. They're like, what, is he trying to lose his job? Like, Andy Dalton's the reason they're 4-9. And I just don't think that's true. And like, his numbers are even better than just our conversation where we're talking about, he seems like he doesn't get you in trouble. He seems like he makes quick, decisive throws. Since the day DA declared him the starter after that Arizona game, that's been 6 starts for Dalton, 7 weeks. He's 8th in the NFL with a passer rating over 100. He's 3rd in the NFL with a completion percentage of 70%. He only has 3 interceptions since that time. I mean, I really don't think he's that far off from the Teddy Bridgewater that we saw take over the team and go 5-0 in 2019. And that Teddy Bridgewater wasn't perfect either. A lot of Nick wasn't a big fan of watching his tape. But I just think both of those guys are in the same umbrella of, if everything else is working around, run game, offensive line, defense, I'm okay with that kind of quarterback. Like, and I get it. I don't think it's a joke to still have confidence in Andy Dalton. His biggest flaws have been in the red zone. He did make the wrong decision on that 3rd and 1 throw to Callaway. I'm not calling him great or anything like that, but I don't think it's a joke to stick with Andy Dalton. I think there's merit to it. But all of those things are not meant to be a slight on Jameis Winston. I get it when you were trying to win the division while you were sticking with that guy, especially in the games where it was working. Now, I think it's really hard to keep Jameis Winston. I don't know what your argument is. Even if Andy Dalton is right in theory, you went 3-7 around Andy Dalton. You played yourselves out of playoff contention. Now you have 4 weeks left. I think Winston is now healthy enough to give a real look at what he would look like in this offense. And I think you owe it to yourself to see, well, maybe he is significantly better. And you definitely need to find out what Jameis Winston is, because you need to consider whether you're going to keep him when he's under contract for next year. So I frankly a little surprised, and I'll be really surprised if they finally get mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, which they pretty much are now, if they never take another look at Jameis Winston this year. And if they don't, I think that means they've already made up their mind for next year that he's not coming back.
There's no I think. They definitely have, if that's how it plays off. 3 thoughts. 1, talking about theoretical Sean Payton was the most exciting 20 minutes we've had on this podcast in a month.
I know. Let's bring it back.
I'm all in on Sean. I don't even I'm all in on Sean. Bring him back. Just get it done. Get it done. Bring him back.
When there's like no fire to that. It's gonna be such an extra letdown on a season full of letdown.
I know.
2, I would probably start Jameis, given where they're at, and I think that would be the most sensible thing. But I mean, just kind of the coach is in his own situation. So that brings me to thought 3. Like, people keep saying this thing, like, is there something else going on? What's the real reason behind it? Like, if Satan himself came up through one of these sinkholes around the city and Dennis Allen was driving by it, he would pull over his car immediately and go try to make a deal with them to win football games, because his job is on the line. He's not punishing anybody. If he was punishing anybody, he's punishing his career. So even if there was some type of weird beef with Jameis, he would squash it for the good of himself to save his job. He knows where he's at. He knows the conversation. He knows that his former boss has friends who just planted a story to saying that the team should fire him and hire Sean. He knows what's going on. So if there was an edge for him to win football games, he would take it at any cost. So I don't think that there is some ulterior thing going on here. I think he actually believes Dalton's his best choice to win games. I don't know if he's right or wrong. He's a 4-win coach right now. We're going to judge him off the results. And that's all you can really do. But I don't think that there's a conspiracy theory at play here at all.
Yeah, no, I think that relationship might have been fractured when you say that. I think there is a weird beef there, but I don't think this is just vindictive.
But it wouldn't stop him from playing.
I completely agree. Yeah. He wants to win. First of all, if he won the final 4 games of this team, finished 8-9, he probably would save his job.
Yeah,
and frankly, he might make the playoffs. But nobody thinks they're going to win their final 4 games.
Mike, stop! I'm not. But even
what I'm saying is that is what Dennis Allen is most motivated to try and do. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, he wants to win the game. So whatever is going on there, they would set it aside. The good for both. They both of them would. They both need each other, like if in that case, but DA doesn't think he needs Jameis, and he might be right, he might be wrong. We'll see. But I don't think that it's anything other than he thinks that that's the best choice to win these next 4 games is with Andy at QB.
Would Jameis even have a chance to show what he can do in this offense? I mean, sometimes it takes, he's been on the bench, he's been hurt. It's like it takes time to get some rhythm with some guys. I mean, that was part of the problem in training camp, right? He hadn't been throwing to these guys, timing was off and everything. I'm just not sure if him just inserting him into the lineup, I don't know how much of you can say this is the best version of Jameis in this offense because he's never had any rhythm with these other guys and he's been injured. So, he's been doing rehab and stuff. So I just think that it'll maybe give you a glimpse into it, but I do think there's a little bit in there where it's like he's still kind of playing with one of his hands tied behind his back.
Well, he doesn't get another chance if he doesn't take this chance. Though.
This
is his best. This is his best possible chance because last year he didn't have any weapons to throw to, and the offensive line started getting hurt around him. And this year he was the one who was injured and just wasn't himself at all. No matter what you think about Jameis Winston, you can't watch the tape of the 4th quarter against Tampa and then that Carolina game and say that's a fair assessment of him. You throw that out.
Somebody might, but I agree with you though.
Yeah. So if he played these 4 games, he would still probably have one hand tied behind his back. That's fair, but it'd be the best look, and it's going to be his last chance. I mean, we completely agree. If they don't put him on the field again this year, then that means he's not on the 2023.
They've
Saints.
decided.
Yeah. Funny little question.
Seems like they already might have. Honestly, I mean, if you're out. The best chance to put him on the field was coming out of the bye. It was to start the transition. Then he could have got in some extra work with a guy like Rashid Shaheed is going to show up for him. Chris Olave is probably going to show up for him. They probably put in some work. They get ready. They get going, and off you go. But they aren't doing that. So I mean, that's kind of telling to me.
Yeah. I get the same feeling that they've kind of made their decision on Jameis, and I mean,
I think it's a bad choice. I mean, he's signed. I would look at him. If you want to stick with Andy, I understand it. I don't, like Mike said, I think there's a logic to that somewhere. But he signed, and if you aren't going to play him, your season's kind of washed, and you aren't going to take a look at him. I think it's a bad decision, just straight up. I do.
Yeah, I mean, Andy passer rating good, protecting the football, getting the ball out, et cetera, et cetera. You're losing games.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. Like you can do all that other stuff, and I know football is more complicated than just putting it on one guy, but sometimes you can put it on the quarterback. Right. And so the offense win the game. Like all of that sounds good, but you played a game where you didn't score any points. So those stats kind of, they don't sit the same way when you kind of juxtapose it against like how the offense actually looks. So, so just a little, I was thinking about, as you were speaking about DA there a little bit, I think it was you, Nick. If Sean returns, what is the chance that Dennis Allen is still a Saints employee?
That's tough, man. It's tough because it would just kind of have to be how DA feels about it. Honestly, it would really come down to that. But if this guy came and took your job,
no, I don't think there's any way you can stay under those circumstances. They might be best friends. You can't stay.
It depends on how he feels about it. Does he want to keep his kids here? Is his family? There's other considerations. A person like me, I'm out. but everybody processes.
Nick, you might have left when the report came out. So yeah. Like what? Oh, that's what's going on. Like, no, let me help you.
DJ are showing up. Why is the gate locked? Where's Nick?
Man. Oh man. I want nothing more than that type of drama of Sean coming back and DA being the DC. And I want to hear all the good old boys. I want all the good old boy stories. I want Pete Peter King and Sean Payton to start back fighting. I just want As the World Turns NFL edition. Just bring like all the craziness because that's what makes it. It will give us a lot to talk about. My interest is keeping the Saints fans entertained. So that's fuel. So yeah. Okay, so what went wrong this year? I was thinking of podcast topics, and I was like, okay, it's after the bye. I know. I should have. That sounds like that's a whole podcast. So let me change the topic. What went wrong? Part 1. All right, because I really could have made a whole podcast out of that, and it might be something we revisit after the season, which may be next week. But so yeah, just when you take a step back and you look at this season, like just say if you had to pick the 3 main things, right? Like these 3 things went wrong. Don't say offense, defense, special teams, because that's my answer. In coaching, I guess you need 4 there. But yeah, let's start with you, Nick. If you just had just a really abstract, high level approach high level thought about what went wrong, how would you categorize it?
Sean Payton left, Teron Armstead left, Marcus Williams left, CJ Gardner-Johnson got traded. Yeah, those are the main ones. I mean, honestly, that's kind of just where it all went. The idea of continuity, which, look, just keeping it a buck, like I agreed with it at the time. It made sense to me. I thought that they were going to be able to get healthy. There's this, I don't know how many guys did they start last year, 45 or whatever it was. It was an NFL record.
Set the NFL record.
Yeah, for guys started. The idea was, they're going to get healthy and they can be better, and whatever the losses from Sean, the health would offset that. That didn't work out like that, in part because they were never healthy. So that's a major thing. But yeah, I mean, I think just the entirety of the global approach went wrong. And that's not like being funny. It's just literally everything that they thought about how this was going to go did not work. And that's the major issue of the season. And so that's what they got to decide. They got to step back and they got to look at that. And we keep thinking, oh, well, Mickey's he's patient. He'll give this time and all that. But I don't know, how much information do you need to evaluate what happened this season? This isn't a 2-season approach. Their approach was for this season to be a playoff team, to be better. And they aren't any of that stuff. They're significantly worse. They're significantly further away from that goal than they were. So I think that you don't need a second season to decide if their approach worked. We already know it didn't.
Right.
So I don't know. I think it's going to be really, really fascinating to see what they do moving forward, because now you aren't deciding if DA's the guy. You're deciding if DA's the guy against the field for the reset. And it's no longer the preserving anything. That's over. So everything they did under that umbrella failed. And, that's the thing going forward. So, as far as what went right, I don't really think anything went right. I think almost everything they did this offseason went wrong.
Just to be clear, when we say Mickey Loomis is patient and reasonable, he's not going to be okay with this season.
Right.
He just might not blame it all on DA.
Right.
He might realize we all screwed up as an organization. We kept the roster intact. We kept the coaching staff intact, and we took that approach that if we went 8-9 last year, we're a little healthier. We're gonna win 10 or 11 games this year. But no, they're not going to say bring it all back. I thought everything was great this year. They're not going to say that. They just might not blame it all on DA.
Not to cut you off. Let me clarify what I meant by that just for a second. Like, yeah, obviously, and he might decide it. Patience there would be him saying, okay, we still believe he's the right guy to lead this under different circumstances. But what I'm saying is Mickey has historically been a dude who has said, oh, this is gone to hell. I'm fixing it right now. I'm cutting the neck off of this Jimmy Graham situation. It went sour. I'm cutting the neck off this Junior Galette situation. It went sour. He will do that, and he will do that very quickly.
Browner.
Yeah, at whatever the expense is. If that is the right thing to save the franchise in his point of view, he's willing to make those decisions. But he's also someone, as you just said, that will sit back and kind of take a more holistic view and look at every factor and kind of put the puzzle together and then see where things lay. But if it's time, he's not somebody that they don't believe in the sunken cost fallacy. They will fix the situation as soon as they see danger.
Yeah, I just meant DA doesn't take the fall if they're unhappy with this season. They're unhappy with this season.
Right.
They are not on the right track. And he will reach the conclusion that we are not on the right track. I just don't know if that means DA gets thrown out with all the other things they did wrong. But yeah, completely. Approach went wrong. And I think DA's biggest shortcoming as part of that approach was, we talked about it, a really kind of relaxed offseason, we thought. His message to the team, was, I'm not going to just come in and make all these changes for change's sake. He didn't turn it into a Bear Bryant style training camp and say, I'm going to run you into the ground. He was like, I trust these guys. They're veterans. We've all built this culture together. We're going to keep that going. When they traded CJ Gardner-Johnson, it was because they felt good about their depth in the roster. There was a lot of, we're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. And they weren't fine.
That lasted until about 3 weeks ago, though.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
like it was like, oh, we got to just fix a few things. And, I think the lackadaisical. Yeah, go ahead.
If I'm looking overall, though, what really bit them is, they do probably not have a top 25 quarterback situation, and probably not really a top 25 offense in the NFL when you add all things together, when they never got Mike Thomas back and everything like that. And so if that's the team you're presented with, well, then you better have a top 5 defense. And they had more of like the 12th best defense. Like they were, above average defense, average special teams, below average offense, below average coaching. There was nothing special about this team.
4-win team.
I actually got my one. I think the biggest thing that went wrong for him this year was bringing back Pete Carmichael. And honestly, it was something that I thought they should have done. I thought he was going to be able to keep running the Sean Payton offense. And it's not even necessarily just about Pete himself. I think just bringing in somebody that wasn't connected to this, and then they're answering to DA instead of kind of approaching the situation where, we were equals 6 months ago, a year ago, and we've been on the same plane forever. I think it could have been beneficial just for the power structure to have one guy at the top of that pyramid instead of two people kind of at the same level and then one kind of elevated a little bit. But look, the offense hasn't been good either, and just kind of doing things a little bit differently there and kind of making it more of DA's team and all that, I think could have been something that might have turned the season a little bit in a different direction.
Well, they wanted this offense. Speaking of DA's team, their vision for this team was to be sort of like what the Tennessee Titans have become. They wanted to play excellent defense, and they wanted to run the ball and run the ball and run the ball some more, and just ask their quarterback to be a little bit part of it. And in the games they won, they nailed that. The games where we were talking about Taysom looking like the most unstoppable force in the NFL, 2 weeks in a row where they ran for like 250 yards when they looked like they were going to salvage their season coming back from London. The dominant win over the Raiders, the dominant win over the Rams. But then when they couldn't run the ball, they looked lost and hopeless. San Francisco, Tampa, they had nothing else. And it made them really panic on offense. When they get down to the goal line in San Francisco and they throw 4 straight times because they lost faith in their run game. When they are throwing on 3rd and 1, trying to preserve a lead. When they can't run out the clock with a lead against Cincinnati. In the games where they couldn't run the ball, that's kind of all they had. They wanted to be a dominant run team that could run out the clock. And when they couldn't do that, they didn't have anything else.
The failed runs against Pittsburgh too.
Yeah.
Yeah. My answer to that question is, I think, Nick, you said it first, everything. Yeah, I think the head coach just not convincing Sean to stay. I think everything even though you could do nothing about that, I just think every single thing that's pretty much happened this offseason, hasn't went well. That's a really like broad statement, but it's hard to find a little light in there.
I will say this though, in hindsight, we all agree what Sean Payton could mean, especially an invigorated, re-energized Sean Payton with rebuilding and reloading in mind. I'm not positive that if they convinced Sean Payton to stay when he was a little burnout and they kept this team wasn't set up for great success. I don't think it was. I don't think this is like a 12-win team under Sean Payton, but they definitely win more than 4. But,
for sure.
And he adjusts when he sees. He would have seen this and had a plan for it.
Yeah. I don't know about a 12-win, but injuries. Injuries are a part of it. But if this team is injured with Sean Payton, they're clearly at the top of the NFC South, in my opinion. That's not saying much, but
it just needed 1-1. They just needed to hold one 13-point lead with 3 minutes left to be on top of the NFC South.
The season would have been drastically different, though, too. I strongly believe if Sean was the coach, Teddy Bridgewater would have been the quarterback. The draft pick would have been Kenny Pickett. There's probably no Chris Olave. There's probably no Trevor Bennett.
You really think that? Give me Bridgewater and Pickett. I would have loved that.
I'm pretty sure about it. Yeah.
Well,
I'm not uncertain. Yeah.
I would have loved that.
Yeah. There's a couple of things I've learned during this podcast that I didn't know, and I'm just like, oh, that's a whole pod. Yeah.
They
So
wouldn't have
DA,
pursued Deshaun either. So
yeah.
That's the
I'm
best
not
thing that
surprised
happened
about
this
that.
offseason was not
That's the good.
bring
That's
that
one good thing that
circus
happened.
to
look,
that
he's
didn't
probably going to
happen.
be okay at some point and get back to form. But if they were for him, whatever, and then having Deshaun around is one thing on its own. But then he comes in and plays how he did the last 2 weeks, and they're for him, whatever. And now Deshaun's not providing any hope on the field. Oh man, it would be bleak right now.
We couldn't even look at Denver and be like, well, at least that didn't happen. Although I will say,
right?
even if Deshaun was thrown for 400, like there's going to be no revisionist history here. I'm very glad that
he's going to throw for 400 on Christmas Eve, and that's going to
yeah. Nick, I will not be potting after that game. DJ on the mic, right? But a quick question about DA, and this is a question that it is just like, it's hypothetical. It's just for conversation purposes, not my opinion. Do you think DA has had a fair shot as a head coach with the Saints? And here's the reason why I ask it, right? And hypothetical again. One, he just kind of had to take what someone else had. Like if he maybe built his own team from scratch, maybe he has a different philosophy on how he would run it versus what he inherited. And two, he has a lot of his team was injured, which I think that's probably a fair thing. But do you think that if you're DA, you're kind of wishing that, man, if I'd have went somewhere else, at least the pressure wouldn't have been to win so soon, and I would have been able to have a little bit more rope and maybe do things my way versus coming to a situation where a lot of stuff is established, but you kind of got that instantaneous pressure the minute you step into that role.
Yeah, I think it was a fair shake. I mean, he took over an 8-win team, and I think that's probably an enviable situation for a lot of people. At worst, all he had to do is keep the car on the road and keep the steering wheel straight. Granted, injuries and stuff created some potholes and obstacles and stuff like that, but I think that he probably entered a better situation than a lot of people got this offseason that were hired as head coaches, barring Josh McDaniels, who took over a similar situation and kind of has had that go sideways on him as well. But yeah, I think he's gotten a pretty fair deal. He stepped into a situation that, from the outside looking in, looked incredibly stable. It looked like there was a really good foundation there. Maybe the foundation wasn't as strong as we thought it was in some places, but I mean, he got to keep his defensive staff and all this stuff. So I don't think that there's any unfairness in this situation.
Yeah, and the defensive culture and staff that he created that earned him the job in the first place. He didn't have to rebuild or retrain or anything. Like, he got to step right into it with all his players and all his coaches. Now, he did take over a team. They were an 8-win team last year, but there was nothing that happened to this team this year that made them better. I mean, the only thing we thought that was going to make them better was health. They lost really good players. They lost a really good coach.
Wide receiver depth chart too.
Was supposed to make them better. That's fair. Well, Olave ended up being the only upgrade there. But,
supposed to be better.
And they did get a little more health on the offensive line, which gave them a fighting chance. But and I mean, my feeling on DA is kind of what I said about my Dalton Bridgewater example. I think there's a world where DA goes 5-0 if everything is great around him, like Teddy Bridgewater went 5-0 when everything is great around him. DA is kind of a Dalton type to me. He's certainly competent enough, and he's really special at some things, but I don't feel like he's the answer. Like, he's going to win games by himself. He's going to be the rebuilder. He's going to be I think he could have been good if everything went well around him, but obviously it didn't.
That's a tough assessment for this situation, if that's the thought in the building. Yeah. I mean, you got to do something.
Yeah, I mean, and look, here's the other thing I will say that's a little more pro DA. Like, he can't come out and say it, but we can hear it in his words sometimes. I mean, I can think of some post-game press conferences when they blew that Cincinnati game, when they when the Niners game, when he held them to 13 points and had a great game plan for them, and the offense scored 0. Certainly when they blew the Tampa Bay game, even though I put a lot of that on him for being so conservative and settling for all those field goals and punting on 4th and 1 and things like that. But there were a lot of times where DA very clearly was like, I had this team ready to play. I really liked our game plan, and we went out there and it didn't, and the offense didn't get the job done, and guys are dropping the ball, and we can't convert 3rd and 1, and we can't convert 4th and 1. There are a couple times where I did actually feel for him, like they had a plan. The Bengals might be in the Super Bowl this year against the 49ers, and they had a pretty good plan, and they had the guys ready to go in both of those games, and he just watched some ineptitude that was beyond his control. So I can admit some frustration. I bet he feels like if he could push that reset button on the game control, that this season could go a lot different, even with the same players that he had, if just a few things go a different way. But 4-9, we're not talking about a 7-6 team. We're talking about 4-9 team.
The problem with that, though, like, and I know I can tell he believes that, and he kind of alludes to it sometimes. He'll be like, man, the execution in this game wasn't. But the thing is, if you hit that reset button, there's too many similarities in some of these losses to actually believe it's going to go differently. That would be my one thing against that. It feels like they're really close to being a good team, but there's a lot of teams that feel like they're really close. Nobody ever, the whole time during the 7-9 era, every single time, Sean, the margin of error is so thin in our league, and if one play goes this way or that way, but like those plays didn't go your way, and for a team like Minnesota that's actually good, look at how many one-score games they've played and how many of them they've won. And when you are a good team, you find a way to win those games. This team has it. They haven't. They just aren't good enough. It isn't in their DNA right now.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, Mike, you mentioned that you could kind of hear it in this press conference, where he thinks that maybe
you don't kind of hear it. He says it. He says it.
True. Yeah, it's very clear. It's very clear. And I've been texting Nick about this all year. Like, I mean, it must feel like it's from like 2nd or 3rd week, whenever. And I feel like if I can hear it as someone who's not in the building, I feel like maybe players hear it. And I think it always, to me, that sounds like, man, the guys on the field didn't do what the plan was good. The guys didn't execute it. The players didn't come through. When they won, he was like, oh, the players did what we have been coaching them to do, or we've been practicing. So they did that. And when they start losing again, it was like, oh, well, the execution again. And it's just like, I just get the notion that I didn't never hear him say, I didn't hear enough of like, man, we are not doing our job as coaches because we're losing the same way every week, And so to me, it just became very obvious that, like, I just felt like it was a lack of accountability. And if he's saying that in front of the mic, then what is he saying? Not you, Triplet, not the mic, Triplet, in front of the microphone.
He's saying it in front of him too.
He's saying it in front of me.
Yeah, the mic. But yeah, well, I mean, then I'm pretty sure that's how he feels when it's more, when he's candid and he's game planning and he's looking at what to do better instead of saying, hey, what us as coaches, like me as a head coach, like, do I need to be better situationally? So, listen, I'm judging him in hindsight, but I have felt all season that's just been something that I'm just like, oh man, it's just like a little bit more accountability may go a little bit long way, right? Give your guys some cover, locker room. Maybe they play for you a little bit more. Maybe these guys could jumping off sides because they see that you're not blaming them in front of the podium. So yeah, that's been kind of been lingering all season, at least for me.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's probably something to what you're saying. Like if you're a guy that dropped a pass and then DA's out there taking the heat, as a player, you might be like, man, I can't drop a pass for this guy.
Right, exactly.
So maybe there's something to that. At the same time, Jarvis Landry's been in the league long enough that he shouldn't drop a pass. And so not everything to me is necessarily under the coaching umbrella. I think Jarvis, again, dropping a pass that's just Jarvis not making a play. But yeah, I'm not sure that it's the best messaging when you've only won 4 games this season. Your players probably feel like there's been some mistakes, like that 3rd and 1. I think that if you're a player, you're probably looking at decisions like that, and you're probably being like, "You're going to blame me when you did that." Like, come on.
Exactly.
So there's probably something to that. I think that's kind of been our consistent criticism of him the whole year. Is that the messaging at times has been kind of like, man, is that how you wanted to say that? So
messaging has been one of his biggest flaws, I think, public messaging. But I will say this: you said what went wrong. Just as we're talking about this, everything else that went wrong. Chris Olave, who we all agree is one of the most exciting, positive parts of this entire team. Chris Olave catches that pass, and the podcast topics today are like, all right, Saints are in first place. All right, Dalton had a great game, and is Chris Olave going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year?
Does DA say, and is DA's job safe? Yeah,
like,
that would be it.
Like he catches that one pass, and all of a sudden you've got a first place team and the Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Mike. See, earlier I had to shut you. Mike, you was trying to sell. Mike, you've been trying to sell hope all podcast. I'm not having it, Mike.
and Tampa got smoked by a backup quarterback too, a third string.
Tampa's
quarterback.
terrible. Yeah. Oh, the Saints would have been probably. Here's the other podcast. All right, who's the worst losing record division winner who ever made the playoffs? The Seahawks, the Panthers, or the Saints? Like, I'm not saying that means the Saints are good. I'm just saying, I was thinking about with the drop pass, because I think Olave probably lost his chance at Offensive Rookie of the Year with that too, which also would have been at least something exciting to watch for down the stretch. And that went by the wayside on that one play too.
One more thing on this. Like if they go 3-1 down the stretch, does that change the view of DA?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, a little bit it does. If they 4-0, definitely would. 8-9 sounds so much better than 7-10, but it depends who they're beating to. They got to beat Atlanta and Carolina. If they lose to Atlanta or Carolina, then he's going to have no supporters left. So let's say they win those two games, and does that mean they've either won at Cleveland or at Philadelphia and finished 7-10? I think people will be like, all right, he's not great, but he's not horrible. I think that would change the perception, because the perception right now is that he's a disaster and the worst coach in the league. He can only go up from there.
I mean, you just made the point. I mean, it's, the worst team in the worst division. So I mean,
they're currently
behind, Mike.
They're currently behind a team that fired its head coach and traded its best player.
Yeah,
that's a tough place to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what's the Panthers' record since Wilkins has become head coach? I don't know, but it looks.
I think 5-5 or something really good. Yeah.
He's won more games since he became head coach than DA. I didn't know that. Wow. See, I mean, that's just tough, man.
I'm not saying he saves his reputation and he has a positive reputation, but if he went 3-1, be the first time he ever won 3 out of 4 games.
Yeah. I'll say this.
It would definitely improve the perception, because the perception couldn't be lower.
Couldn't be lower.
Yeah. Well, to the point, if he wins this game, will it help your perception of him? Yes, because I have a better perception of a coach that wins 5 games than the one that wins 4, and the one that wins 6 over the one that wins 5. But we're talking like very low, right? I mean, I think some of the things
save his reputation, quote unquote.
Yeah. Or even if my perception on what I think should be done with the head coaching position, because I think that we've seen enough stuff as far as messaging, situationally, training camp, and this is a guy that's been a head coach before, right? And so, a new coach, I would say, all right, man, you got to learn how to message, you got to learn how to get in front of the podium and take responsibility. You got to learn how to run a training camp where guys are going to be able to tackle, and be a little bit more physical or something along those lines. But this is not something that you expect from somebody who's been a head coach before. So if he wins the next 3 games and he beats the Falcons, the Panthers, and the Browns and lose to the Eagles, then, I think that it's very likely that they go 3-1. I would probably say they would go, actually, I don't think it's likely, but I'm saying it's very, maybe 50-50. It's not out of realm of possibility, because Falcons are just as bad as a team, and the Panthers don't have the talent, and the Browns their quarterback ain't played all year. Yeah. And so those 3 games, and if he beats someone like the Eagles, the Bills, or something else, then we're talking a little bit different. But I think we've seen enough head coaching qualities to kind of know that there's some questions there. And, I think, or maybe some shortcomings. And I don't think that's just going to change.
If he gets to save his job, they're doing 5 weeks of training camp at Millsaps again next year.
Oh man. He's gonna just bring in Parcells to run it for him or something. He's gonna get fined for 2 days.
Yeah. Oh, he's gonna get fined weekly for too much contact in practice throughout the offseason.
I'll say this, man. If they lose this game this week, I think it's gonna get ugly. I think it's gonna get ugly.
It can get ugly.
That building is gonna gonna be ugly in there.
To Desmond Ritter in his NFL debut.
Yeah, I think if they lose that
quarterback,
they lose that game, the fans turn on them, they're getting booed. Guys might start checking out. Like that's when it gets dangerous. I think that's when it gets dangerous.
Yeah. It's hard to believe this is a big one, but it kind of is.
This is the biggest game in DA's career, right? Like, oh gosh. All right, final thing. Start with you, DJ. Predictions: Saints or Falcons this week?
Saints gonna win.
All right.
I believe that. I think they cover the spread too. They're like 3.5 point favorites right now. They're gonna cover.
You got any gambling websites want to be a sponsor? Come through.
Sports books.
Yeah, come through.
It's a 3.5 spread on blank sportsbook.
Oh yeah.
There you go. Come through. We available.
I agree with DJ. I haven't had optimism. Like I don't know how many times I've picked the Saints to win this year. It's we don't have to turn in picks, so I don't make official picks. But this is the first time I wasn't even comfortable when the Rams came to town. I don't think I picked them to beat the Raiders. Might be a while, but I think they're going to beat the Falcons.
You're comfortable?
I'm not comfortable, no. But
sounded like you were comfortable.
Yeah, Mike.
I think I feel better about the Saints winning this game than I felt maybe all season. I'd have to go back through this, but I'm looking forward to seeing the injury report tomorrow, because if Marshawn Lattimore and Eric McCoy come back, we might have the most complete Saints team we've seen all year.
Pete Werner might be playing or something.
Yeah. Okay. I was gonna go negative, but yeah, they're gonna be healthy. So, Messi just scored. They're going to be healthy. So yeah, I think that they got a chance here to win this game. Look, and this is where DA is going to get evaluated. So if we're going to go calling back to the previous topic, if it was unfair to him at some point in this situation, it would have been the health thing. The health thing would have been the one thing that made the circumstance unfair to him. That's going to turn into his favor. So yeah, I'll pick the Saints this week. And I think this is where DA's got to show himself. You can't stand up there and there ain't no more excuses, man. If everybody's back, the squad's back, you got to show up. You got to lead them.
Turns out the Mark Ingram injury was the costliest injury of the season, though, because of the timing of it.
Yeah. Yeah. They got to claim Eno, man. They got to make that move.
Gotta be something wrong with him to get cut by 2 teams in 2 months.
I get the thing that led to his ousture in Arizona, I guess, is that he had some words with the coaching staff, and they got rid of him. And I don't know, maybe
Houston's starting running back just got injured, and they still cut him.
Yeah,
there's something there. There. We need to do some investigating.
Dwayne Washington revenge game.
Your pick?
Oh, I'm picking the Falcons. Yeah, I'm picking the Falcons. I've not picked the Saints. When was the last time I picked the Saints to win? Maybe week 2 or 3 or something
week
like
1
that.
Against the Falcons.
Yeah, I'm like I got a pretty good record picking them to lose. I don't see no reason to change it late in this year. I mean, listen, just being serious. I mean, running quarterbacks who they don't really have more film on, I mean, that can be a little. I think that's where this defense has struggled. And this is a division team who plays them well. So yeah, I'm picking the Falcons to win this game, which means the Saints will probably win. But yeah, I'm going Falcons here. So. All right, well, Messi is scoring goals, and Nick needs to get to the soccer, so or football as they call it in the UK. So yeah, thank you guys for
scored more today than the Saints scored in San Francisco.
I might let Mike take us home for that.
DJ, play the song. DJ, play the song.